But as we see here, passwords is the kickoff. We all have to have them. We're logging into accounts. I hope when you look at these most common passwords, you're not using any of these. But truth be told, statistically, we're all using one of these on one of our accounts. Sometimes we have 50, 60, 70 accounts, and we don't even realize how many accounts we've created online, old accounts that we don't use anymore, and the ability of hackers to manipulate that if they were to hack that one account because it has a simple password, and then work themselves backwards to get passwords to other accounts. So that's really why we're talking about this. Now, we need to define it because you should always define your term, and a password is just a set of characters or words used to authenticate access to a digital system. But here are some important statistics that we might not realize, but when you start to think about it and write it down, you think, well, that's actually true, right? People can have as many as 85 passwords. This is according to CNET just a few years ago. A 12-character password is 62 trillion times more difficult to crack compared to a 6-character password. Obviously, it increases by a factor, right? A multiple every time we're adding a new character or number or symbol to a password. And that's why you want to have as many characters as that, whatever that application will take. Now, I'll get to how you manage that. That's going to be very important here in a second. Multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication, and I'm going to talk a bit more about that later, blocks almost all attacks. And essentially what that is, right, is you're logging in, you use your username and your password, and then it sends you normally a code to your phone. That is the second factor or the multi-factor. There are other factors we can use. Sometimes it's a fingerprint. If you have a phone or a computer that allows you to put a fingerprint, that could be another factor. So if you're using a password coupled with that, you can pretty much prevent someone from hacking that account. We hear about data breaches. I'm going to talk a bit about that, certainly in this session and the next session, but we almost see it, it feels like daily. We hear of some new company that got hacked and personal information was shared, not the least of which was the federal government recently and IRS data with our social security numbers, right? They don't really like to cover that one, but the social security, the IRS got hacked with our social security information, right? So, I mean, it's almost inevitable that our information gets out into the dark web. It's used by hackers to then exploit people, tricking them into giving them even more information. Almost half of us use the same password for all of their accounts. And I don't know how many of us in the room are guilty of doing that, certainly reusing at least one or two passwords on a handful of applications. Most people just feel like it's just the way I do it, right? I mean, I don't, how can I remember all these passwords? And that's true. How would you remember multiple passwords, much less for 85 accounts? That would be impossible to do. But you see an increasing number of people, almost half, so you got half using the same, and then the other half are using some form of a password manager, which is going to be an important component of what I'm going to talk about, so that way you don't have to remember your passwords. You just remember one password, and that password manager has the 16-character passwords for all of the accounts that you use. You have no idea what they are. Great. You don't want to know what they are because it's just gobbledygook, which is good. It makes it hard to crack. You just use the password manager to manage that. There's some interesting stats also on people who work, like, are still in the workplace. And I wanted to share them because there's so many elements here that I know we likely do even on a personal level. Using your child's name or birthday for a password. It's not surprising then that when a company gets hacked and their customer data gets out on the web or used by hackers or on the dark web, that it may be someone in IT who used something like this, right? Because we're guilty of doing it. Way too many people are reusing passwords. You've got people writing down passwords on sticky notes and then people see them, right? Because that's now something that's easily cracked. People sharing a password via SMS or email. Not always the most secure way to communicate, particularly if you don't have security in place. So if you're sending that out, someone could pick it up in transit, right? And that unfortunately does happen. Some people just have a plain text document, right? Maybe they open up Word and they just start typing in all their passwords. And unfortunately, that's not very secure either. And what are we worried about people stealing? Well, of course, it's our data, it's our money, and it's our identity. And hopefully, no one in the room's ever had to deal with anything like that. I have an anecdotal personal story where I got hacked. Someone was walking around. I live in the Dallas Fort Worth area in Texas, and someone had an ID with my picture on it and my name on it. I don't know what address they had. And I don't know how they knew, but they knew I had an account with Home Depot. And they went to every Home Depot around the Dallas Fort Worth area and started buying things. And they would walk in and they would say, "Hey, I got this cart of stuff. Here's my ID. I don't remember my account number." And they would look it up and they charged it to my account. And then they would go to another Home Depot in another city. Once I realized what was going on, I had to file multiple police reports, right? I can't just go to the Home Depot police. I had to go to the Fort Worth. I had to go to all the towns that they went to and file individual police reports and then argue with Home Depot and a bank that I hadn't made any of these purchases. Right? It was quite a nightmare a few years ago. Now, you may or may not be familiar with the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, but they also show or share an anecdotal story. Here's a woman named Emma, and she effectively got hacked. She got a text message saying, "We've transferred $700 out of your bank account." She thinks that's not true. I didn't do that. So she tries to log into her bank account, can't log in because the hackers already changed the password. So then she goes to her email to try to reset the password, but now she's locked out of her email because the hacker had also locked her out of her email. And I want you to imagine that scenario, right? If the hacker can hack your email, they can pretty much hack or get into any of your accounts, because all of your accounts out there are linked normally back to your email address, usually your personal one. So all you have to do if you're the hacker is then go to that account, a bank account, a utility account, and say, "Hey, I forgot my password." It sends it to your email, which they've hacked, and now they have access to the account, and you're locked out of all of it. Right now, you've got to call. Who are you going to? You have to call Google. Try calling Google and getting help. Right, it is a long process. So the idea here is to avoid that, making sure that we have good passwords. So CISA, again, this agency, the government's sort of cyber agency that also provides information to the public, provides 3 important points in what to do with a password. Make them long, and they say at least 16 characters. And that's a lot of characters to remember, but remember, I'm going to get to that. And obviously, the longer the better, because it's a factor higher every time you add a character to the length of that password. They also say to keep them random. So there's 2 options there, right? A mix of characters and numbers and symbols. Think of something like this, right? You've got uppercase and lowercase. That's going to be very hard to remember or even to tell someone to do without them writing it down. So that's great. Or to use passphrases. And it even gives you an example here of strong, stronger, strongest. Horse, purple hat, run, bacon, shoes. And in this case, you're misspelling it and you're doing it phonetically. And in this case, you're even taking it one step further and adding some symbols, right? So remember, you would just remember a bizarre passphrase and then maybe mess with the spelling or add in some numbers in place of vowels, that kind of thing. And the argument there, or the thinking that's easier for you to remember, but still hard for anyone else to randomly hack. And last but not least, make them unique, meaning every time you use a password, only use it that one time. Do not reuse the same password for multiple accounts. And that's really all that they're saying here is their guidance. Now, those were their 3 main points, right? Make them long, make them random, and make them unique. But CISA recognizes that's not always easy to manage, right? If you've got up to 85 accounts, you're not going to believe this. Last I checked, even just doing this presentation, I think I'm managing over 350 passwords, because I work for a number of companies like Nex-Tech. I have multiple business accounts. Sometimes my client gives me access to platforms. There's no way I can possibly manage all of that. I also have children, right? And I have parental access to things that they have at school in multiple accounts. One's taking a note here and one's supposed to post information there. And I have to log in to put money on their, school lunch account over here, all different passwords. And so you can imagine how this gets really out of hand. So they say, use a password manager. Does anyone in the room have a password manager?
I
Yeah.
do.
Okay.
Are you supposed to be showing us like some slides or stuff? Because we can't see anything. Except your.
Oh, you're not seeing anything?
No.
Well, that's
All we can see is your handsome face.
that's embarrassing.
Okay.
Hold on one second. I will fix that here.
Thanks for mentioning that. It makes it more engaging when you can see. So
Yeah, I just lost my Zoom here. Just one second. Where did Zoom go? Sorry, I've got 3 screens and 2 computers, and I seem to have lost my Zoom control.
Look at Task Manager.
What? Oh man.
has 3 screens in front of them.
That is quite embarrassing. I can't believe I didn't have that up there. I apologize, guys. All right.
There you go.
Good. I mean, he had it earlier. I saw the slide earlier, James, but I don't know.
So do you all see that now?
Yes.
Good.
Okay, very good. Well, hopefully, I think what I was talking about was pretty general, but just to revise, right? Make them long, 16 characters, make them random, ideally a combination of uppercase, lowercase numbers and symbols, and then make them unique, right? So that you're using different things for